everyone. Thank you for joining this session. First of all, my apologies. We were going to start last Monday, but slight obstacle opportunities turned up while I was trying to get back from Costa Rica to Asheville, North Carolina. The flight was supposed to arrive at midnight in the US. I was supposed to be back at my house by 2 a.m. and so class at 8 a.m. Wasn't going to be a problem. But of course, the Devas, Nagas, and Kinnaras, and Gandharvas, and Kumbhandas, and Yakshas, and Kataputanas, and so you'll learn about all these names or gain some acquaintance with them this week and next week. They probably had other ideas where I should be or when we should start. So we will start today. I think 2 classes is sufficient because I don't know I'm able to say that much about this particular Dharani, but I will try and tell you whatever I know about this Dharani. So we begin first with the usual opening recitations. These recitations basically in the Drigungagyu style of beginning. So no matter what tradition, what lineage, there is teaching that everybody knows, known as the 3 excellences. So these 3 excellences is what protects and what ensures that our practices are protected. What are they protected from? Fundamentally, it is to protect from 3 poisons, right? Confusion, attachment, and aversion. And then how these 3 poisons manifest as the 8 worldly concerns. The 8 worldly concerns fall into 2 columns. The column that we want a lot and the column that we don't want any. The column that we want a lot is the column that consists of pleasure, gain, fame, and praise. Then the column that we don't want is pain, loss, infamy, loss of reputation, bad name, and finally criticism. So these 8 worldly concerns can easily pervert our Dharma practice, so that the more practice we do, the more stuck it seems we get. So the Lord Gampopa, following in the tradition of the Kadampa masters, very pointedly reminded us that even though the Buddha Dharma is the only means to free ourselves from suffering, to free ourselves from confusion, if we don't know how to practice the Buddha Dharma, then practicing the Buddha Dharma can lead to the lower realms. And this is particularly true when it comes to such practices as certain aspects of Vajrayana practice, because on the surface, right? On the surface, it looks like violence, for example, is condoned. Violence is somehow seemingly accepted, or in some other cases, if you're unfamiliar, right? You look at like representations of deities in the Vajrayana. So the violence part are like the wrathful deities, right? Then also it seems like, so that is like extreme, right? Aversion, anger. Then the extreme of like attachment, right, is how sometimes certain Vajrayana representations have the deities in sexual embrace. So that also, so easily could lead us into thinking, desire is not a problem, desire is okay. But attachment and aversion, desire and hatred, these are all harmful no matter what level you're practicing. Gyalpa Jiten Sungden famously said, the 10 non-virtues that are to be abandoned at the Hinayana level are the same 10 non-virtues that are to be abandoned in the Vajrayana level. There's no level of the Buddha's teachings where non-virtue becomes virtue. Non-virtue doesn't become virtue. The 3 poisons are always poisonous. As to how we handle the 3 poisons, obviously there might be differences depending on what kind of skillful means we are employing. Depends on what kind of skillful means the Buddha gave to help us handle, right, these poisons, these non-virtues. But ultimately, virtue and non-virtue is not mixed. And we need to be clear about this. Now, when I say ultimately, of course, some of you might say, wait, I thought ultimately. Now you put a capital U on ultimate. You say, wait, I thought ultimately it's all beyond good and bad. Yes, that is on the Buddha level, but we don't need to worry about Buddha level. We don't even need to talk about Buddha level. Why? Because once you're at the Buddha level, then at Buddha level, there's no problem whatsoever. So when I say ultimately here, I mean ultimately in the reality that we are in, on the ground that we are standing on, in the head space that we're mostly occupying and sometimes imprisoned by. In that context, virtue and non-virtue, Buddha taught very clearly what they are, what the 3 poisons are, what the 10 non-virtues are. And then from there arises all kinds of likes and dislikes, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and infamy. All of that arises from these. So it's really important at the beginning that we set the correct motivation. So that is the motivation, the excellence at the beginning. So the excellence at the beginning is to have the excellent motivation. And the excellent motivation is the motivation of, as I'm sure all of you know already, the motivation of Bodhichitta. So I don't have to say much more, I hope, about this Bodhichitta, except to just remind everyone, compassion itself, of itself, is not yet Bodhichitta. Compassion itself is not yet Bodhichitta. Compassion is an indispensable element in Bodhichitta. Love and compassion are the 2 absolutely indispensable elements in Bodhichitta. But a 3rd, equally important element is the wisdom element, which is to have enough wisdom, to have enough understanding, to know simply love and compassion will not lead us out of this mess. Love and compassion need to be the motivating forces for us to want to commit to achieving Buddhahood, and to commit to achieving Buddhahood not just for our own purpose, but in fact for the purpose of all mother sentient beings. Right? So that is the motivating force of love and compassion. But the wisdom aspect of understanding that the only way to get out of the cycle of samsara is by achieving the state of Buddha. I have to achieve the state of Buddha. All beings have to achieve the state of Buddha. Short of that, the problem of samsara cannot be solved. Freedom from samsara is not possible. So this third element is really important as part of our understanding of what bodhicitta is. I can tell you, on Facebook, which I am there, I routinely screenshot, things that people write about bodhicitta that I think we need to kind of be clear, that no. What you're talking about is this emotion of love, emotion of compassion. Of course, these are the motivating factors in terms of bodhicitta. But until and unless it is informed by this understanding of only at the state of Buddha are we free from confusion, free from samsara, then it is not yet bodhicitta. So the excellence at the beginning is bodhicitta. And so in the opening recitations, in the words of Kyopa Jigten Sumgen, in the Dugum Kagyo we often recite first the aspiration bodhicitta and engagement or action bodhicitta. These are the two aspects of relative bodhicitta. So this is the excellence in the beginning. Then the excellence in the middle is non-grasping. And this non-grasping should be based on not, sometimes we can experience forms of non-grasping out of hatred, out of aversion, or out of attachment. Even out of attachment, maybe not so common, but definitely out of aversion. We might practice something that you feel is non-grasping, non-attachment, but it is not. This non-grasping, this not getting stuck, is to be informed by some understanding of the emptiness nature of all phenomena. All phenomena, translation, all experiences. All experiences of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thoughts. So especially thoughts and emotions. We need to know, we need to understand the emptiness nature of all appearances, of all experiences, of all phenomena. So here, in the context of bodhicitta, now we're talking about absolute bodhicitta. And so the excellence in the middle, meaning in the midst of doing our practices especially, in the midst of doing our practices, we should not grasp, we should not fixate. We should always have somewhere in the background. Now, of course, we don't have perfect understanding yet of shunyata, of emptiness. We don't have perfect understanding yet of the union of inseparability of appearances and emptiness, of form and emptiness, as the Heart Sutra taught. But at least some kind of understanding has to be present. We have to appreciate at least some degree of this ultimate wisdom, which is ultimate bodhicitta, which is the state free from all elaborations, the level where appearances and emptiness are understood as non-contradicting. Things appear because their nature is empty. Because the nature is empty, appearances become possible. And in seeing and understanding that all phenomena is like that, then no fixating, meaning no attachment or aversion arising specifically here in relation to our practice. So good experiences that arise, we recognize as mere experiences. Bad experiences that arise, we recognize as mere appearances, mere experiences that are temporary. And so this is the excellence in the middle. Then the third excellence, the excellence at the end, is the excellent dedication. And then all the merit that we have amassed, all the virtue, all the powers, all the blessings that have been gained through this practice, through this recitation, through this learning. We take a moment to recognize how there are so many beings who, while they are looking for happiness, they have never come in contact with the causes of happiness. So we are all the same, from the worst person you can think of to the most admirable person that you can think of. We're all the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. So all we are doing really is just this, looking for happiness, running away from suffering. In that sense, kind of informed by the 8 worldly concerns. So we have to recognize that. Even our coming to the Dharma, initially, because of the 8 worldly concerns. One form or another. But we have to slowly, right, change. Instead of being controlled by the 8 worldly concerns, more and more being controlled, so to say, by Bodhichitta. So at the end, when we do dedication, it's arising first from understanding that there are so many beings, right? There are so many beings that want happiness, but they are trying so hard, but they're not finding it. And so now that I have found it, and now that I've had the opportunity to deepen my understanding, to deepen my own practice, my own familiarizing with these liberating dharmas, then by the power and merit of this, may all beings also quickly, swiftly find the precious dharma and find the liberation that they're looking for, find the freedom from suffering that they're looking for. So basically at the heart of dedication, it is that. Then also it is said, when we dedicate, we also need to remember, right, the interdependent nature of dedicating, the person dedicating, who we are dedicating to, and the act of dedication. To see that these three, called the 3 spheres, meaning the 3 elements that have to be present for any action to be an action. The one acting, the one acted upon, and the act itself. See that all 3 of these are interdependent. They do not exist in and of themselves. They exist interdependently and therefore empty. So dedication, in a way, you could say, the excellence at the end. Often we're just rushing through because it's late, I got to go already. So then just blah, 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 dedication. Then, okay, bye-bye. I say that because I do the same thing, But dedication, in a way, is bringing together the 2 bodhicittas. Relative bodhicitta is emphasized at the excellence in the beginning. Ultimate bodhicitta is emphasized in the excellence in the middle. The excellence at the end brings together relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta in the practice of dedication. So anyway, these are the 3 excellences. So please try to maintain some understanding of the 3 excellences as we go through the material we'll go through today and for next week. Om Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path. Liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent. I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent. I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. So next we have to offer a mandala for receiving these teachings. So this mandala is offered to the three jewels, to the three brutes, and then in particular you think that this mandala is offered to Sitatapatra, the deity whose Dharani we are going to learn something about today. And I'm sure all of you have received the transmission, the oral transmission that His Eminence Trisab Rinpoche gave us several weeks ago. So this mandala also you think is also offered to the Guru, the Guru that connected us to this Dharani. So it's okay if you don't have the text for this, like these recitations and all that. You can just listen, and important is from your heart. When you listen to the words, you follow and you think accordingly. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon, I visualize as a Buddha land, and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the three kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Deva Dhakini Rena Mandala Pratija Soha. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Doje Chanjen Dele Naroda, Mamita Popa Doje Dengo, Kaden Sunden Savela, Meshab Sadula, Mayidam Chokenda. So adept so daji jinji lo Keptengi dome zalingen do be don so yong la gen so men ke wa do je jang pa ji den compassion ba de do ta de song ke kyo la mi jinji lo ji tu je je nen ge ma ba shin ne gan sim de de do be jinji lo wo je ne je ne chang sa ba ma ge sa ton bo la ne sen cho ke ngo do ni pe ma ju ne she she da ko do kan do ma bu ko de ge je se da de ge jinji lo je she se so bo do pe ma se de mo mi jo ke ye ge bo da ne 도선 산제 군징 어머니 라센 조공 용순 동세 바자 웰라메 샤바소 So first we begin with the name Sitatapatra. Sita means white, the color white. Patram is a parasol or umbrella. So often, so in Tibetan, her name is Dukar. Dukar. Duk is the parasol. Kar is white. White parasol, white umbrella. So this motif of white umbrella goes way, way back in ancient India as a symbol of safety and protection. Protected from the sun, protected from the monsoon rains. So both from the torment of heat and the torment of water. In fact, you see this motif of white umbrella as a symbol, as a metaphor of protection. Also, like say in the Pali Canon. Pali Canon is the authoritative text for the Theravada tradition. Theravada tradition is the form of Buddhism that you find in many Southeast Asian countries such as Thailand, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Myanmar, also in South Asia, in Sri Lanka, Laos, in Southeast Asia. So these are followers of the Theravada tradition. So just also to point out, in the Theravada, they don't have this Dharani. Because, of course, this Dharani is part of the Mahayana tradition, and more specifically the Vajrayana division of the Mahayana. And so it is not found as a Dharani in the Theravada. But Dharani, this Dharani has its equivalent in the Pali tradition. There they are called the Paritta. Paritta are verses of protection. Dharani, you could say, function in the same way. But more literally, Dharani means like a device for memorizing. A device for memorizing. So it seems that originally the Dharani was a way to kind of summarize all the key points of the Dharma. All the key points of the Dharma is summarized, is encoded, you could say. So it's like today, people talk about coding, right, for computer. So Dharani is in a way a type of code. And so then the shortest form of something that works like this are what we call mantras. There are more technical differences between mantras and dharanis, but I think a general guide, you could say, mantras are very short, dharanis are long. And so in this case, this text of the Sitatapatra Dharani, it's very long. Maybe the longest of all the known dharanis. So, as I said, in the Pali tradition, the equivalent of dharanis are parittas. So, in many Theravada countries, people recite parittas in order to offer protection to others and also to protect themselves against harm, known and unknown harms that might come to us. These harms come to us due to our karma, and specifically our positive karma weakening. The way karma works is, of course, all the actions that we have created in the past, created with intention, because intention is the determining factor in the creation of karma. In fact, somewhere in the sutras, the Buddha says, monks, I tell you, monks, please understand, karma is intention. Karma is the result of intention. So actions that we create with intention produces karma, both positive and negative, both good and bad. So we have created a lot of karma in the past. And so all these karmas that we have created, all these causes that we have created, they lay in the bank, you could say. Then from that bank, these karmas ripen. Kind of like these, what's called fixed deposits that you put in the bank. And not your checking accounts, not your saving accounts, but this fixed deposit that you put in. And then they will ripen, right? They are due. You put a 6 months or 3 months or 9 months or 12 months, then they ripen, right? They are due. Then you can enjoy the fruits, right? When they ripen. So continuously, this will ripen. Our karma, both positive and negative, they are continuously ripening from moment to moment because we have created so much positive and negative karma. So then they will successively ripen. So when a whole string, you could say, of negative karma ripen, that is when we are susceptible to suffering. that might arise. So in terms of how suffering and happiness turns up, right? Buddha taught that this is all due to the meeting together of causes and conditions. Causes and conditions. Causes are things that we create ourselves. Cause are things that we create ourselves. So the karmic actions of body, speech, and mind are the causes that we plant, the seeds that we plant. Conditions are provided by others. Conditions are provided by others. Causes are created by ourselves. When the right causes and conditions meet, then that cause, those seeds, will ripen. When we say conditions are provided by others, it's also not like absolutely by others. You can do something about it. The best thing, of course, don't create those causes. But then we know we have all created all kinds of causes. So given that we have already created all kinds of causes, and then you say, given that conditions are provided by others, and given that, suffering arises, or for that matter, happiness arises when causes meet the right conditions, does that mean that what I've created in the past, now no choice, when the conditions come, I'm going to experience it? Not necessarily, because you can make the decision to remove yourself from where the conditions are gathering. So learning to recognize when conditions are gathering is also a very powerful, important skill to cultivate as we practice the Dharma. So with regards to suffering, the conditions for suffering, I can say, they are always going to be there. The conditions for suffering. Whether you have enough cause to experience the fruition of that suffering or not, that unsure. Then even if you have the causes, if you're very careful, when the conditions gather around you, you may be able to avoid that particular cause from ripening. You may be able to avoid. Yes, avoid temporarily, but at least you still can avoid. But most of the time what we do now is we're completely oblivious to the fact that we have created all these causes of suffering. We have planted all these seeds, right? Yet even though we fear the fruits of suffering, we don't know how to prevent them from ripening. Instead, we go heads on into the conditions of suffering. We encourage the conditions of suffering to meet our causes of suffering. Then causes and conditions come together, then suffering manifests. The Sitatapatra Dharani definitely acknowledges the importance of and the power that the conditions of suffering can contribute to our suffering. In fact, in the Sitatapatra, many different conditions of suffering are listed. But the causes of suffering, we have to recognize, are created by us. The Sitatapatra Dharani, at least on the surface, is a way to help us handle the conditions of suffering. To either break those conditions, dispel those conditions, turn away those conditions, pacify those conditions, or take us out of those conditions. So on the surface, the Sitatapatra Dharani does that. And the tradition says, does that in a very powerful way, in a very efficient way. But if we are to really benefit from the Sitatapatra Dharani, then we have to do more than just avoiding the conditions of suffering. We have to recognize the mechanics of suffering, and therefore work on also. First, avoiding the creation of the causes of suffering. With regards to the causes of suffering that we have created, carefully kind of wrap them around so that they don't meet the conditions of suffering. It's like having seeds, Seeds, right, can last a long time, even 1,000 years, 10,000 years. If they're kept in the dark, they will not sprout. But when these seeds meet sunlight, moisture, and dirt, they will sprout. So the seeds of suffering are likewise. So when we practice something like the Sitatapatra Dharani, is to, you could say, chase away this water, moisture, dirt, and sunlight that could cause our negative seeds to germinate, to sprout. But still, we have to work on getting rid of those seeds that have been created, negative seeds that have been created, and stop, right, putting those seeds in the ground. With regards to the past, purify. With regards to that has not arisen yet, don't plant those seeds. Do your best to avoid planting those seeds. You cannot be like, doing your Sitatapatra Dharani, then at the same time, sprinkling seeds everywhere. Then you're just creating a lot of work for yourself. Then it's not going to work. Yeah, so this white umbrella, again, so let's come back to how the Dharani protects from the conditions of suffering. The conditions of suffering highlighted in this Dharani are associated with spirit beings. These spirit beings are different category of beings that exist in this world that we live in samsara, in other words. There are all these beings. We call them spirit beings because we cannot see them, so we call them spirit beings. For Buddhists and for those who can see them, they're not that spirit. They look pretty solid, so to say. But our eyes, they say our human fleshy eyes cannot easily see these beings. So then we call them spirit beings. So maybe some being somewhere will call us spirit beings, right? Just like we think these beings are maybe ghosts and spirits, we fall under ghosts and spirits to some other being somewhere, right? They know we're present, but they cannot exactly see us. But every now and then, maybe their whole village gets squished. They're like, oh, those human ghosts, they're at work again. Right? Just like ants, ants cannot see you. Because we're so big. They cannot see us. But then suddenly, so many of them died because we accidentally, just step on them. So we are like those spirit beings. So the spirit beings mentioned in here, they are like that. Some of them, in a way, they're so big we can't even see them. Then they sneeze, and all of us are blown away. Or they slip and fall, all of us are crushed. But here, we are dealing with not them so much accidentally doing things, but them because they are upset with us, because they are angry with us, and they might cause harm. Or also because other people have recruited them to help teach us a lesson. Now here we're not talking about our gurus in their kindness, asking them to teach us a lesson. Here we're talking more about based on attachment and aversion. Samsaric reasons for teaching us a lesson. Things like this happen. Although many of us now live in a world, in an environment where we're not actively concerned about our neighbors or our relatives causing us harm, but nonetheless, there are people who do still even now live in those circumstances. And so likewise, there are these entities who actively seek to harm us. Sometimes they know why, sometimes they don't know why. Just like sometimes we know why we like someone, sometimes we don't know why we don't like someone. So all of these, can cause chaos to turn up. The Sitatapatra Dharani helps us to handle this, these conditions of suffering. In the text that we have, so if you look at the text that we have, it says, Thus I have heard at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in the assembly hall excellent Dharma in the heaven of the 33. So according to this text, this Dharani was taught or was revealed by the Buddha, was taught by the Buddha, not in our human world, but in the heaven of the 33. The heaven of the 33 is the second level of the Devaloka, the divine heavenly God realms in samsara. So still in samsara, but the divine God realm of the second level. The first level of the divine God realm is the realm of the four kings. So actually under the four kings, many of the spirits and spirit entities mentioned in this Dharani, they are said to be under the control, under the command of these four kings. The four kings that are at the first divine realm. The first Devaloka is the Devaloka of the four kings. Above the Devaloka of the four kings is the Devaloka of the 33. It's called 33 because the first, you could say, occupants of this Devaloka, this divine realm, God realm of the 33, were 33 friends who accumulated great amounts of merit, and as a result, together, they were born into this. In that sense, you could say this: when this divine realm first formed, our whole universe formed, came together due to our particular types of karmas. And so our human world formed the way it formed, remained the way it remains, changed the way it changes, and eventually dissolved the way it dissolves entirely due to the interdependence between us and these conditions. Likewise then, the heaven of the 33, the Devaloka of the 33, came into existence, continue to exist, eventually will dissolve, right? Due to primarily the particular karmic baggage, the particular karmic mixture of these first 33 that arrived there. Among the 33, the king of the 33 is called Indra, or more typically in Buddhist sources called Chakra in Sanskrit. Chakra. Chakra or Indra. Yeah? So that's the heaven of the 33. So it is said that the Buddha taught this first in the heaven of the 33 to a great assembly of monks, a great assembly of bodhisattvas, and Indra, the lord of the gods. So he is the boss, so to say, of the heaven of 33. And so he is playing host to the Buddha. And apparently some of the Buddha's monks, a great assembly of them, were able to go with the Buddha to this Devaloka of the 33. So these must be, these monks must be the Shravaka Buddhists, the hearer Buddhists. We commonly call them Arhats. So these must be the great Arhats who could travel with the Buddha to the Devaloka. And it is there, according to our text, that is said that the Buddha. So here it says, as soon as the Bhagavan sat down on a seat arranged for him, he entered this samadhi. Samadhi is this meditative state where the mind settles evenly, equally, and in a stable way. So the Buddha is an expert in entering different types of samadhi. So this particular samadhi, this particular state of mental evenness is called seeing the Ushnisha in its true aspect. So Ushnisha. Ushnisha is referring to this protuberance, this growth above the Buddha's head. Now in the Thangka paintings, in Buddha statues, it looks like a ball of hair, right? A top knot. But actually, I think the original Ushnisha is not so clear, In fact, there are some that say this Ushnisha that we see now, painted in paintings and in statues, in the Buddha's own time in India, right? Not everyone could see it. It's like a hidden sign. But it is one of the 32 signs of a Buddha. So maybe ordinary beings will see just a little bit of a slight elevation here on top of Buddha's head. So that's the Ushnisha. And that Ushnisha then is the symbol of the ultimate wisdom of Buddhists. So all Buddhists have Ushnisha, because it's the physical sign of the ultimate wisdom of Buddhists. So this samadhi is called seeing the Ushnisha in its true aspect. So here it means, right? We're not talking about that physical flesh growth here. We're now talking about true wisdom. The wisdom of Buddhists. So he has entered into this state where his mind is abiding in the state of seeing reality as it is, seeing everything clearly and without mistake. Then it says, as soon as he entered this samadhi, the words of this secret mantra was born from the center of the Bhagavan's Ushnisha. from the Ushnisha, these words came out. These words of the Dharani came out of the Ushnisha. So this is what this text tells us. Let me pause here and see if anyone has any questions. Any questions? No? Let's see. I think there was a question. I'm checking. How often should... Oh yeah, all those details. There's a question about how often should we chant. Yeah, all those details can come. So now question is what you just heard, anything that is unclear, that you need any clarification. If not, okay, well, we will continue. Now, there is a second account to the origins of this Sitatapatra Dharani. The second account is found in a sutra that is... It exists, it seems, only in the Chinese translation. And this is a sutra called the Shurangama Sutra. In the Chinese translation of the sutras, there are two distinct texts called the Shurangama. One is much shorter. It's called Shurangama Samadhi something something. There, it's a separate sutra, no relationship with this Sitatapatra Dharani. But there's another much longer sutra, longer by many times, called the Shurangama Sutra. And these days, in China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, when they say Shurangama, they're talking about this longer one, and this longer one which has the Sitatapatra Dharani in it. The sutra actually has many different elements in there. In there, the Buddha taught about the mind, the Buddha taught about emptiness, the Buddha taught about the precepts, the vows, the Buddha taught about the meditative states of like straying, all the ways that we could be misled while we are engaging in meditation practice due to the five skandhas kind of acting and five skandhas kind of in turmoil, and the misleading states of mind that could arise. So this Shurangama Sutra, so it's been translated into English by the Buddhist Text Translation Society. So this volume like this. So in the Shurangama Sutra, there is another account for how and when the Buddha taught the Sitatapatra Dharani. So briefly, in this sutra, the Shurangama Sutra, the location of the teaching of this Dharani is in the human realm rather in the realm of the 33. And what happened was, according to the account in the Shurangama Sutra, one day Ananda, or rather not just one day, but so Ananda, the Buddha's disciple and cousin, younger cousin, much younger than the Buddha, but he was a cousin of the Buddha's. That it said that where he lived, he would go out for alms rounds with the other monks, and presumably he lived with the Buddha, so maybe he would go on alms round with the Buddha as well, because he was the Buddha's personal attendant. So I remember, I think in this story it was in Magadha maybe. Let's see. Or in Shravasti. Okay. Yeah, so according to this sutra, this was in Shravasti. And so Ananda caught the attention of a young woman in Shravasti. And this woman, over time, became more and more and more attracted and infatuated with Ananda. So much so that now Ananda is kind of in danger. But as long as he went out for alms, with the Buddha or with the other great monks, nothing could really happen to him. Meanwhile, this young woman became so completely infatuated and in love with Ananda that she persuaded her mother to basically use a mantra, a Dharani, to charm Ananda, to control Ananda's mind. What we might call black magic. But those are also called mantras. Those are also called Dharanis. They are just not mantras or Dharanis, coming from the Buddha necessarily. It's said that all the powerful gods and spirits, they can offer people their own Dharani. And those things can have power too. So this is said to be an ancient Dharani that the young woman's mother has practiced and is passed down in their family. So then the young woman got the mother to intervene on her behalf. So it is said that one day Ananda actually went on alms round alone, not with the Buddha, not with the other monks. And at that time, the young woman's mother, called Matangi, saw the opportunity, and so used her powerful mantra to mesmerize, to control, to then hook Ananda into their house. Yeah. Now here also we need to understand, because Ananda wasn't yet a Shravaka Buddha, meaning an Arhat. So the causes of suffering still existed in him. His own state of this, his own seeds of desire, they are there. So then he met with the condition of desire. This young woman's mother having that power. So all of that came together. So Ananda got mesmerized and went to their house. Not only went outside of the house to receive food, went into the house, went into the bedroom, etc., etc. But before the big etc., in that moment it is said that the Buddha knew what was about to happen. Instantly, it said the Buddha sent Manjushri. He said, Manjushri, you go now to where Ananda is about to get in trouble. And you recite this Dharani. So it said that the Buddha, downloaded this Dharani to Manjushri in an instant. So then in an instant as well, Manjushri with his great power arrived outside of the house and chanted this Dharani. The Dharani broke the spell that was cast on Ananda. Ananda woke up just in time and ran like crazy out of the house, complete shock as to what had happened, and ran back to the Buddha. It is said that the young woman and her mother also ran and started to chase Ananda, and they all arrived at where the Buddha was. And then the Buddha said, okay, everybody calm down. But the mother and the daughter, it's like, we want him, he is ours. The Buddha said, no, he's mine. And in fact, all of you, sit down. Then the rest of this sutra, the Shurangama Sutra, ensues. And the Buddha talked to Ananda and to Matangi, mother and daughter, of the nature of desire, the nature of suffering, the nature of the mind. And then this whole sutra was taught actually to Ananda and these two women. It is said that at the end, they were all liberated by this teaching. So then also here, in one of the chapters of the sutra, then the Buddha again repeated the Dharani and taught everyone this Dharani. And also taught people how the various ways to use this Dharani. And so a certain ritual is mentioned, which is the creation of a particular mandala. And this mandala is not so much like a sand mandala or a painted mandala. This mandala is how to arrange a whole, you could say, shrine, whereby you occupy the inside of the shrine, the images that are to be arranged, the mirrors that you should hang, and then the mirrors are reflecting each other, creating this vision of infinity. So there's a very interesting setup, also called a mandala, mentioned in the Shurangama Sutra. So here, this second account of how the Sitatapatra Dharani was taught and came about gives us more information. Now, in case some of you is tempted to say, but which one is true? Well, I don't know. But the way I look at it would be to say, well, Buddha taught this Dharani on many occasions. So maybe at the heaven of the 33, it was already taught. But I think Ananda didn't have power to go up to the heaven of 33 because he wasn't an Arhat yet. So then Ananda provided the human kind of conditions, right, for this Dharani to be taught in the human realm. So because of this, especially then, in East Asia, but also from even the Tibetan text that we have, it is very clear that this Dharani, one of the claims to fame of this Dharani is to break these types of spells. So these days, right, how do these spells come to us? How do we become enchanted? How do we become, like, how are our minds like controlled? Whether it's controlled by desire or controlled by aversion. A major source of like this black magic, so to say, of this particular type of condition of suffering. Yes, some of you guessed it, social media. And the all-powerful algorithms that we're talking about. So we need the Shurangama Dharani or the Sitatapatra Dharani to help us break these spells, break this black magic that many of us, under the grips of this black magic, will have great desire. Under the grips of this black magic, will have great anger, resentment, jealousy, all of that. I'm not joking, the spirit entities, are not stuck in an ancient time, They don't just use axes and, swords and lasso, They have upgraded their equipment too. So we need ways to break these spells. Addiction is a form of weapon. Whether the addiction is material substances or non-material. So like the internet, the weapons, the magic, the spells, those are just the instruments of suffering. Then conditions of suffering, some beings may or may not be involved, then cause of suffering, ourselves. So there are so many places where we could begin to address the problem. The best one, do not create causes of suffering. That's the heart of the Buddha's teachings. So we continue to get better and better at doing that. Meanwhile, these types of devices can help us to temporarily create some more conducive environment that will be less distracted by suffering, less distracted by happiness even, less distracted by pleasure, to temporarily carve out a space for us to really work on the true causes for the end of suffering, which is the two bodhicittas, if we were to summarize. It's the cultivation and the full manifestation, the full fruition of the two bodhicittas is at the heart of what frees us from suffering and frees all beings from suffering. But in order to have more conducive circumstances, environments, and conditions to do that, we can rely on something like this Sitatapatra. In Tibetan Buddhism today, and that of course also in Bhutanese, in Mongolian, all those cultural areas that practice the form of Buddhism that we, for simplicity's sake, we call Tibetan Buddhism. In these areas, the Sitatapatra Dharani especially is associated with this practice called to reverse, to turn back, dokpa in Tibetan, dokpa. Dokpa is to reverse and to turn back harm to turn back harm, to turn back, like in this case of Ananda, right? The story in the Shurangama Sutra, Buddha instructed Manjushri to use this Dharani to turn back, to reverse the spell cast by Ananda's admirer. So, to turn back the armies, to turn back harm, to turn back dark magic, to turn back spells, this Dokpa. So, 3 Dokpas, Dokpasum is very famous in Tibetan Buddhism. The Dokpa associated with the Heart Sutra. By reciting and contemplating the Heart Sutra, to turn back, to turn around, to reverse harm. Then the second Dokpa is the Dokpa of white umbrella, Dukkha Dokpa. Then the third Dokpa is the Dokpa associated with the lion-faced Dakini, Singhamukha Dokpa, the lion-faced Dakini. So these are called Dokpasum. Often when people do the white umbrella Dokpa, they only chant the short mantra. They don't chant this long Dharani. So these are the 3 Dokpas, very famous. And often they are done as a set also. So people would like request like monastery or nunnery. Because like maybe they do some astrology, or maybe their lama with power to see what's going on would say to them, you need to go make some offerings at the monastery and request them to do Dokpa for you for 3 days or 7 days or 1 month. You have things like this. And often it's the short mantra of Sitatapatra, and then the Dokpa. Another kind of Dokpa reversal is associated with Tara Puja, doing the 21 Taras, and then to the Dokpa associated with Tara as well. So in contemporary Tibetan Buddhist practice, Sitatapatra or Dukkha is associated especially with the turning back of harm that comes in the form of spells, black magic, spell, harmful magic that others might direct at you. But spells or curses, you could say curses, need not just occur on the level of like someone doing magic, like hiring a shaman, the brujeria in Latin America, not just that kind of black magic or harm, Curse can also come with someone having a lot of anger towards you. Just their minds, constantly wishing you bad. That is a type of curse. That is a type of harm. Yeah. So you could think of like things like the Sitatapatra Dharani. There are other practices like this. You should really understand them as like intervention for acute problems that has arisen. Like a fast, quick, to stop you from bleeding to death. But know that the chronic illness still needs to be addressed. Yeah? The chronic illness still needs to be addressed. So don't practice the Sitatapatra Dharani just thinking, I will get rid of this curse, I will get rid of that curse, I will get rid of this spell, I will, cut that spell, I will, get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of my enemies. And meanwhile, you are going everywhere all the time creating enemies. If you are constantly creating enemies, then you are wasting your time. using, this Dharani, that Dharani to try to solve your problems. You should only kind of use this Dharani, so to say, as a way to temporarily stop, turn back, give yourself a break, give others a break. Another way of practicing, I would say, or even a better way to practice this Dharani is do it without too much hope and fear. Don't do it, when you have problems already. Or rather, don't wait until, you have problems and you suspect that someone's, knowingly, unknowingly is cursing you, and then you are desperate to turn around curses. You're desperate to turn around harm. Then only you start, I don't know how beneficial it will be. But rather, if you use this Dharani as a way, as a daily practice, as a weekly practice, once a week, once a day, once a month, whatever it is you commit to, the schedule that you set up, you do this and you chant this, not with that like, very overt desire, right, to overcome black magic. Maybe you have watched too much Harry Potter, which I like a lot, my confession. If I choose, I'm more likely to choose these fantasy movies and series, than sci-fi. But sometimes these two merge, I hate it when these two merge, by the way. I like to keep like the ancient fantasy world. So I like stuff like that, So maybe that's my attraction to like the Sitatapatra Dharani, because then, instead of like the Lord of the Rings creature, this has a whole pantheon of creatures. They have their own elves, they have their own orcs, they have their own giants, they have their own. It's really a very rich, you could say, index, a very rich register of the Indian, and the Indian, of course, is related to the Greek as well. So there are these connections. Ancient mythologies about the spirit world is in this text. But my own experience, and if I may say so, my own advice about this practice is don't get carried away with, I'm going to be a wizard. I'm going to break all the, dark spells, defense against the dark arts, right? Yes, this is a good defense against the dark arts, right? But don't do it only when you think, very bad things have happened. In fact, I don't know how effective your recitation can be. But rather, recite it, with the oral wall understanding that I presented to you, right? What are the real causes of suffering? What are the real solutions to suffering? Then you relate to this practice as a practice of bodhicitta. Stabilize your mind by reciting. So use recitation of Dharani, recitation of sutras, as a way to stabilize the mind. So you chant the words. Then, so the technique is to use the sound, the words, to stabilize the mind. The motivation is for the benefit of all beings. The understanding somewhere in the background is, yes, there are malicious intent that unfortunately beings, humans and non-humans, might direct against other people. Sometimes even self-directed. Self-hate is a form of curse, is a form of sorcery. So think about all the suffering that the world is experiencing due to attachment and aversion. Right? And that they are the real spells, they are the real black magic, they are the real dark arts that are providing conditions for suffering, right? So then you chant this based on this motivation to want to break all these conditions of suffering for yourself, for all beings. Then this practice can be very meaningful and, I can say, effective. Because when you most need it, it's already there to protect you. You don't even need to specifically employ it. It's like a force field of sorts is being built as you routinely chant this Dharani. Then so much harm, that might have come your way gets turned away. Sometimes you have heard, like, oh, when you are doing a big thing, some obstacle will arise. When you're doing something important, right? Some obstacles needs to get out of the way. So this obstacle is often the manifestation of a much bigger problem, which without these devices like this could have maybe taken your life away. But because of these kinds of things, these kinds like parita, dharani, that the Buddha gave, was actually able to minimize. So for example, in the life of the Buddha, it said that one time he suffered an injury, physical injury, where his foot was pierced by a thorn. And that is said to be the ripening of a karma, a very serious karma, I think involving in one of the past lifetimes the Buddha killing a number of people. Now, if the Buddha did not have all the purifications, all the protection that he accumulated over many lifetimes, then he would have had to experience the ripening of that karma in all the seriousness that the seeds were. But because of these circumstances, these practices, when it came time to ripen, it just ripened very lightly. So I believe, without getting too literal or too superstitious about it, I think last week's failure to have class is something that needed, that helped get things out of the way. Then we can hopefully complete this class in next Monday's class. There were other things going on. I was in Costa Rica to very unplanned and to discuss some. In fact, no, I didn't even go to discuss anything. But it ended up with some potentially positive undertaking for the near future. And so I think there's some kind of obstacle that had to arise as a way to remove, take out of the way the bigger obstacles that may come otherwise. And so we can rejoice in that. Also, I was thinking, because all the categories of different types of beings will be revealed, it's already revealed in the sutra, but we're going to talk about them. So maybe some of them weren't ready for it. They say, you're not having class. Either we don't want you yet to talk about us, or something. I don't know. Who knows, right? Then some of you will say, everything is just coincidence. Okay, fine, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. But also don't be overly, sometimes I also say, we need to have some self-awareness. So some self-awareness that religious people, spiritual people need to have is, we tend to be a little bit delusional in thinking that everything that happens in the world is because of us. So be careful, don't think like that, okay? I think some religious people have a particular predisposition to suffering that kind of delusion, Oh, it did not rain today. Oh, that's because I needed to do da 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 da. Oh, it rained today. Oh, because I da da da. As if, you are the only one that matters, Don't encourage that delusion. Yeah. Insofar as karma, yes, always think, I'm responsible. Responsible is not to make you feel bad. Responsible is actually to make you understand, like, oh, I have a choice. Just like these algorithms, right? People talk about the algorithms like on Facebook or whatever, on YouTube, it's so bad and so bad and so bad. Yeah, of course, But I think you're not seeing who the real enemy is if you spend all the time just stressing over the algorithms. Who feeds the algorithms? In the end, who continues to click? An hour later, you're down a rabbit hole because it's getting more exciting, So why is it getting more exciting? Either appealing to your attachment or your aversion? Because the seeds are being watered. Stop scrolling down. Or stop pausing. If you just stroll past, the algorithm is reading, oh, you're not interested. So then the conditions of suffering turns into another form. So you still have a choice. That's the good news about karma. Sometimes the choice is not so clear, of course. Sometimes the choice is not so easy, of course. But the central point of the Buddha's teachings on karma is you get to decide. And that's liberating. Yeah? So anyway, I have to talk so much about karma because I think, especially on a subject like Dharanis and mantras, we sometimes get carried away by the magical quality until we get so carried away that we fall into this terrible wrong view, which is that karma, cause and effect, the law of karma can be perverted to our purposes. Absolutely not. If the law of karma can be perverted that way, then finish. No need to practice Buddha Dharma. Useless. Nonetheless, Buddha taught these Dharanis and mantras and Bodhittas. Buddha did give us these devices. So we need to know how to use them. Otherwise, as Gampopa says, even seemingly Buddha Dharma can lead to suffering. Can lead to the lower realms. So, from the center, so in the story, actually in the Shurangama Sutra story, right, the Buddha sends Manjushri to recite. So then when they all come back and this time the Buddha recites this again to teach to others, there also it says from the Buddha's Ushnisha, and in this account it says from the Buddha's Ushnisha, a second Buddha, identical to Buddha Shakyamuni, appears from the Ushnisha, and then thousands and thousands of Buddhas emanate from that Buddha, and they all, in one voice simultaneously, they recited this Dharani. So there is this grand vision of how thousands and even tens of thousands and millions of Buddhas that appeared from the Ushnisha of Buddha Shakyamuni proclaiming this Dharani in all directions. So when we recite this Dharani, if we can also conjure up, using the language of magic, if we could also conjure up this vision of vastness, that when I recite, it's not just me, poor little me, reciting. So this is a good delusion to have. I just told you not to have this delusion of everything happens because of you, but this is skillful use of your imagination, that when I recite this, it is like the original recitation. When from the Ushnisha of Buddha Shakyamuni issued millions of Buddhists, and they are all simultaneously in one voice proclaiming this Dharani. Bring about that level of vastness. Then the words, right? It begins first here with Sanjala Chasalo, Chola Chasalo, Gindela Chasalo. Homage to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The three jewels. Then homage to the 70 million complete and perfect Buddhas. You can understand that this 70 million is referring to, in the Shurangama Sutra telling of what happened, from the Buddha's Ushnisha, millions of Buddha appeared and proclaimed this Dharani. So this 70 million, you can think, is referencing this. Then, homage to you, the Sangha of Bodhisattvas and the Sangha of Shravakas. So meaning, all the Bodhisattva disciples of the Buddha gathered around, and all the Shravakas, the Arhat disciples that gathered around, homage to them. Then specifically, very interesting, Maitreya is singled out from among these disciples. Homage to you, Maitreya, and all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas. Mahasattvas is it's Bodhisattvas on the 8th level and up. They are called Mahasattvas, the great beings. Then next, very interestingly, the 4 levels of the Arhat path. All the great beings training through the Arhat path, which begins with the level of the stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and complete Arhats. Is in the next section. But the order is a little different. It begins first with homage to you, Arhats in this world, and homage to the stream enterers. So it goes first with the 4th, level 4 first, the highest. Then it goes back to level 1, 2, 3. Homage to the stream enterers, homage to you, the once returners, and homage to you, the never returners. These are the 4 levels of the Arhat path. So it is not true, to say, oh, Mahayana tradition don't respect the Arhats. No, I think it's a mistake to think that. Where Mahayana sources criticize the Arhat, it is not to say that the Arhats are not. It's not to say that the Arhats are, they are not good. But no, it's to emphasize, the power of Bodhichitta. And the great power of Bodhichitta, of benefiting all beings, can be so profound that even excels the limited focus of the Arhat path. So it's not to put down Arhats, but rather relative to the arhats, the bodhicitta, those who embody bodhicitta, those who strive for bodhicitta, is so immensely even more beneficial to both self and other. The next section, homage to you who have reached perfection in this world, homage to you who have set out towards perfection. So this is also referring to those who are progressing along the path to awakening. So until here. The next part, actually, is referring to those who practice spiritual or religious practices, but they don't necessarily have the ultimate understanding which the Buddha taught with regards to what causes suffering, what are the true causes of suffering, what are the true causes of happiness, what do we have to abandon, and what do we have to practice. So up until here is referring to those who do have that information, who do have that understanding, and who are working towards freeing themselves and others from confusion. But then, in the next few lines, is talking about, you could say, worldly spiritual types. Very powerful, actually. So here it says, homage to you, divine rishis, who have the power to curse others. You say, wait, Buddha is condoning cursing others? No, this is just stating that there are these beings, right? And here it's referring to like those like ascetics in the time of the Buddha. So Buddha himself, Siddhartha himself, studied with some of these ascetics. So these ascetics have gained through their own control of their mind, control of their emotions, transcending distraction, gathered immense spiritual potency. And especially in ancient India, among Buddhists and non-Buddhists, there's this understanding that there are these types of beings who have built up a lot of power through their concentration. And their speech is very powerful. If they curse you, even the gods cannot help you. So many actually Hindu mythology have the sages, these rishis, who have the power to curse. And even the great gods and the great goddesses, like Vishnu, Brahma, Shakti, Shiva, even they can be cursed by these rishis. So this speaks to the power of speech, of potent speech. So here it says, homage to you, which is giving due respect to those beings who are powerful. So the homage you can think of is obviously different from the homage that we pay to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, to the great Bodhisattvas, to the Mahasattvas, to the great Arhats. With regards to homage that we pay to the earlier group, that one is actually the homage of taking refuge. We take refuge in them. But these other homages, the next few lines, no, we don't take refuge in them. We just respect them for the power that they have. These are, in other words, they don't have the liberating understanding of the Buddha Dharma. But nonetheless, they have cultivated their minds, become very powerful. You can think of this as, like the world leaders. They're very powerful. Yeah? They have cultivated their mind, their position, their influence. So there they are, But they could be doing good or doing bad in the world, as we can see, So when we say homage to them, we're not saying Yes, I support you in your acts of harm. No, no, no. It's simply saying, I see you. I see that you're powerful, you know. Then homage to you rishis, adept in vidyas. Vidyas are spells. But vidya also, literally it means like knowledge. But here it's specifically the knowledge of spells, the knowledge of magic. How to have influence over others, control over others, is what vidyas are. So to you rishis who are experts in the vidyas, who have the power to benefit others. So not only can they curse others, they can also help others. Homage to you, accomplished holders of vidyas. So this is like the more advanced of that group. First, those who have facility in the vidyas. Now the next one is to you who are accomplished already. Very effective in the use of these vidyas. In a way, you are appealing to them to say, yeah, you can curse people, but you can also help people. And I respect you for that power, but please help others. Please help others. I remember when I was young in my school in Malaysia. I went to high school in Malaysia. I was born and raised there. So our schools, modeled after British schools. And so in the school, we have a class of special beings. They are called the school prefects. Like some elite beings that teachers, select them to become disciplinarian, right? To kind of like police the other students. And often, who get chosen are these like, they are smart and they are good looking, all of that, and popular, and they behave themselves, all of that. But once in a while, someone who really doesn't behave themselves end up as a prefect, And the story is always that this is the teachers knowing the only way to control this guy, right, who is usually out of control, is to make him a prefect. Now he has to behave himself. So it's like these rishis, They have the power to curse people, but then you appeal to the other side and say, but you have the power to help people. So now I'm going to give you respect. Now you stop harming people, you help people. I think same kind of approach that you're seeing here. Next group are the powerful gods of this world. Next group are the powerful gods of this world. We know from other places, these powerful gods of this world, they have heard the Buddha teach actually. So they know something about the Dharma. And in fact, some of them is said to have pledged themselves to the practice of Dharma and to the protection of Dharma. So the first among them is Brahma. Homage to you, Brahma. Brahma in the Hindu system is the God who created this world. But even in the Hindu system, when they say Brahma created this world, Brahma did not create this world from nowhere. In fact, Brahma, even in the Hindu system, is simply the one who starts the whole new cycle. He's the first in this cycle. From him, others appear. And then at the end of the whole cycle, where the whole universe is destroyed, right? It says that Brahma goes back into a state of latency, dormancy. Then from there, Brahma arises again. So even in the Hindu system, Brahma, often they say, oh, Brahma is the creator, right? Vishnu is the preserver. Shiva is the destroyer. Even in that system, in the Hindu system, it's understood that existence goes in cycles. So Brahma is not like the say, Christian or Jewish or Muslim God, where nothing, absolutely nothing existed before except for them, and then they created everything. And then everything goes in a straight line, a linear time, from the beginning of the creation to the conclusion of creation. That's more of a kind of Judeo-Christian Muslim view of the Creator God. Creator God existed way before anything existed and has always existed. Brahma doesn't have that kind of connotation, even in Hindu, much less in Buddhist. So in Buddhist understanding, Brahma is the one that first appeared in our world system. So homage to you, Brahma. Then the next mention is Indra. Indra is the main kind of god, king of the gods, he is called. So king of the gods where? In the desire realm. Brahma is the king, so to say, the head of the realm of forms, Rupa Loka. Rupa Loka are these levels of heaven where these gods have pure forms, very refined forms. Then there are these lower god realms called that are part of the Kamaloka. Kamaloka is the desire realm, the realm of the senses. Among the realm of the senses, Indra is said to be the chief. So the chief among those 33. So that's Indra. So homage to Brahma, homage to Indra. Again, elsewhere we know Brahma and Indra, they are not like completely uninformed. In fact, they are already on the path to Buddhahood. Brahma is said to be an 8th Bhumi Bodhisattva. I'm not sure about Indra, I don't remember. But Brahma is said to be an 8th Bhumi, 8th level Bodhisattva. So it's said that both Brahma and Indra was present when Siddhartha was born. They know who this child is. So they were in attendance. It said that when he was born, they caught him as he issued from his mother. They held him. Then later, after the Buddha achieved enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, it was Brahma that came and presented him with a conch, a symbol of the full teaching and declaration of Dharma. That Brahma came with a conch and Indra came with a wheel and appealed to the Buddha and said, please teach the world. So this is Brahma and Indra. Then next, excellent Rudra, together with Uma. Rudra and Uma, also known as Shiva and Shakti, or Shiva and Parvati. So in the Hindu system, Shiva is called the destroyer. Again, not destroyer as in like, but he is the power at work when the universe has exhausted its own ability to exist. So his consort is Uma. Rudra is the wrathful aspect of Shiva. Rudra. Rudra means the howler. So he's imagined as this great ascetic that wanders the mountains of the Himalayas, but wild. So he's called the howler. He howls like a wolf, making these sounds in the high mountains. Homage to you, excellent Narayana. Narayana then is what we know as Vishnu, the preserver. He maintains the world. So even in the Buddhist system, we say, yes, he maintains the world. Yes, Brahma was the first that turned up, then Rudra is the force that is responsible or at work when things fall apart. So likewise, Narayana maintains order, maintains the smooth functioning of the world. As long as the beings in the world have the karma for it, then he is the contributing condition. Here he is said worshipped by the five Mahamudras. There is another way to translate this. Maybe not as worshipped, but attended by, served by the five Mahamudras. There are different explanations for what these Mahamudras are. In one explanation, it says that they are his five consorts. Because Narayana or Vishnu is like a universal monarch, a king. He's the king of this universe, maintaining. So in that way, sometimes even seen as superior to Brahma and Indra. The whole system, he kind of presides over. But he's seen as having, therefore, like powerful kings. People imagine that he has five consorts. So they say the five Mahamudras are the five consorts. Another explanation points to how Narayana is said to have five weapons. And the five Mahamudras, at least in Hindu sources, is referring to the five weapons. And what are his five weapons? He has a discus. A discus is like a wheel, but it's a sharp. It's like a kind of like one of those samurai things, you throw out. So this discus is like a magic weapon that can go out and cut off heads. So he has a discus. Often in Hindu painting of Vishnu, he's painted with Vishnu one finger like that, right? And then there's like a circle of light. So that's the discus. He sends that out. Next is a conch. So that when he blows this conch, when he blows this conch, all the beings who he wants to conquer, just hearing that sound cripples them, terrorizes them. Then he has a mace, meaning a club, and he has a sword, and the fifth is bow. Of course, implied there is arrow. Bows without arrow not very useful, but somehow it's just called the bow. So bow and arrow is the fifth. So these are the five weapons of Vishnu, of Narayana. Then, homage to you, excellent Mahakala, who resides in the charnel ground, destroyer of the city of Tripura, worshipped by hordes of martyrs. First, Mahakala. You say, wait, is this Mahakala the Mahakala that we always talk about in Vajrayana? No, I don't think so. These are just names, Multiple individuals can have the same names, right? How many Johns do you know? How many Cecilias do you know? So just because it's called Mahakala, don't think, oh, must be that Mahakala. This Mahakala is actually another aspect of Shiva, and also in the terrifying aspect of Shiva. And so here it refers to, again, in Indian mythology, in Indian story, there is a story of this wrathful Shiva who assumes the identity of great time. Mahakala means great time. So what does time do? Time eats everything up, right? Time devours, eats everything up. So there's a story of how Shiva in his great rage, destroyed this city, which is a collection of 3 cities actually. Tripura in Sanskrit means 3 cities. So he destroyed the 3 great cities. And he is worshipped, he is honored by a horde of Matra. Matra is literally the mothers. But who these mothers are, they are referring to a class of spirit beings that are imagined as female and very powerful, and often said to be the source of epidemics, disease, pandemics. The matras are the ones in charge. They are also the ones that protect babies and newborns. So their role is kind of ambiguous, Could be good, could be bad. Now this is not, I mean, there are many cases where you can say, oh yeah, this material is sexist, or, paints, the feminine negatively. But no, here, all the categories, males, female, they could switch, from being good to being not good, and it's all very volatile. But the matras. So in India today, there's a tradition of the Sapta Matrikas, the 7 mothers. In many Indian villages, they have shrines dedicated to the Sapta Matrikas, the 7 mothers. And then these 7 mothers are attended by many, many other matras. So people simultaneously respect them and also with a little fear. Also kind of like knowing that, we have to be careful because they're volatile. So if we don't behave correctly, if we don't behave respectfully around their shrine, we could kind of turn the other side of them. And then disease might break out. So here, when it says Mahakala, or this wrathful Shiva, is worshipped by the matras, that means he has control over the matras. In this instance, we say he has control over the matras, but then in other places, there are sometimes these Shapta Matra terrorizing Shiva too. Never that simple, It's not this black and white world. It's all different shades of gray. Gray that can turn completely white in one moment or turn completely black in another moment. All very delicate. There's a comment that I don't usually see the comments, but this one I see. The matrikas are the same as the mamos. Mamo is the Tibetan translation of the Sanskrit matrikas. Mamo. Then, of course, in the Tibetan world, prior to the arrival of Buddhism, they already have a sense of mamos. So the indigenous Tibetan sense of mamo don't necessarily 100% matches matra in Sanskrit. So then the mamo, in a way, is already becomes like a hybrid. And just like the word naga, when it got to China, China already has their own ideas about dragon, long. So they translated nagas as long because it approximates what they know about this category of spirit called long in Chinese, and what the Sanskrit text called nagas. So then it's kind of more qualities are added to the nagas. Then likewise Tibetan call nagas lu. Also then lu has the qualities of naga and also some indigenous ideas. some indigenous ideas about what Lu are. Yes, mamos, not momos. Eat momos, and if you're not careful, mamos will eat you. Mamos are momo, Tibetan dumplings. Right? So eat momos, but if you're not careful, mamos will eat you after you eat momos. Matris. Okay, now preliminary homage done from the Transcendent Deities, Buddhas, Buddha Dharma Sangha, 70 million Buddhas, right? Great Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, all levels of arhats, those on their way to enlightenment. Then the great gods of this world, meaning, right, the worldly side of things. So now that section complete. Now begins a new section where 7 categories, 7 families are given here, and the 7 lords, the 7 Buddhas associated with the 7 families are given here. Now, you and I are very familiar with the 5 Buddha families. This is a different system that talks about the 7 Buddha families. Yeah. So the 7 Buddha families, so you see here, Tathagata, Lotus, Vajra, and Jewel. 4. Elephant is sometimes said to be what we normally call the Karma family. Karma family, Amoghasiddhi. So the Bhagavan, meaning the Buddha, yeah, the main Buddha of the Tathagata family, that one is Vairochana. The Bhagavan of the Lotus family, Amitabha. The Bhagavan of the Vajra family, Akshobhya. The Bhagavan of the Jewel family, Ratnasambhava. The Bhagavan of the Elephant family, if elephant is indeed the Karma family, then that is Amoghasiddhi. 2 more families, we don't normally see them. I think outside the context of the Sitatapatra Dharani, they don't turn up elsewhere. And so I don't know what to say. I'll elaborate who they are. Except that I think one way for us to think of it is like, even when we talk about 5 Buddha families, right? They're not absolutes. They are just one system of understanding. One map, so to say, for us to map out both the confused world and the enlightened world. So you have the map, the mapping system of the 5 Buddha families. Here is 7 Buddha families. In some commentaries, these 7 Buddha families are associated with the 7 Buddhas of the past, which is a common list. The 7 Buddhas of the past is said to be these 7 Buddhas of the 7 families. So the 6th family is called the youthful family, or the family of youths, Kumara. And then the family of Nagas. So these 7 families can also be referring to 7 types of beings, characters. So the Naga character, the youthful character, the elephant-like character, the jewel-like character, the Vajra-like character, the lotus-like character, and the Tathagata-like character. Kind of like Myers-Briggs, 16 types. These are the 7 types. So with each type, there is a Buddha. So here again, I think the take-home lesson for us is that no matter what type of beings, what type of individuals, they all have Buddha nature. So now we are acknowledging, we are paying respect, we are paying homage to the Buddha qualities that is in all of us. So these 7. Next section, which we won't go through much or now, is a list of 10 Buddhas and specific names. Not just the Buddha of this family, Buddha of that family, but 10 Buddhas are singled out or 10 out to be identified and paying homage to each of them. And some of the names here you will recognize easily, like Amitabha, Akshobhya, Vaisajya Guru, the medicine Buddha, then Samantabhadra, or Shakyamuni first, then Samantabhadra, and Vairochana. So the ones that we commonly have come across is Vairochana, Samantabhadra, Shakyamuni, Vaisajya Guru, Akshobhya, Amitabha. The others not so commonly seen, but their names are found in other sutras actually. So in one commentary that I'm aware of, these 10 Buddhas are said to represent the Buddhas of the 10 directions. 8 usual directions, meaning the 4 directions and the 4 cardinals, and then the in between, right? So now you have 8 directions, right? And Buddhist texts always talk about 10 directions. Why? Up and down. So that's 10. 10 Buddhas are the Buddhas of the 10 directions. So again here, it's pointing to the presence of the awakened state in all directions without exception. The universality of Buddhahood and the availability of Buddhahood to all, regardless. Today I think we should stop here. Not sure if we can finish everything next week. We'll see. If we don't finish, then we'll find a way to continue. If there's interest, I don't know if this is at all useful or interesting or not. So we see. Next week we will know, you know. Today we have 42. If next week we have 21, then we know. Yeah, and oh yeah, I see now. Let me go see. Oh yeah, useful, interesting, da da da. Yeah, good. Of course. Yeah, so if you want to do research yourself, you know, you go Google all these names and see what you come up with. The only thing I want to slight caution is that so a lot of these are like more quote-unquote Hindu, or you might read in articles that say they are Hindu, this, and that. I think that's a little inaccurate. You could say that these gods and deities, their names, they are shared by Hindus, by Buddhists, and even by Jains, which is the other religious tradition in India, right? So all these, basically Indians have a shared pantheon of gods and goddesses and demons and spirits and all of that. But each tradition has a different, slightly different understanding as to the role and the significance. So like often, you know, even in Buddhist texts, I see people writing like this. When they talk about Brahma, Indra, they will say things like, oh, these are Hindu gods. You know, I think this creates like confusion, you know. And we're thinking, oh, what are the Hindu gods doing here? These are not Hindu gods, but these are the gods and goddesses known to the Buddha's audience. And the Buddha never cancel out, the Buddha never canceled. This term now very sexy. Cancel culture. Buddha did not cancel these gods or goddesses. Buddha just told us, actually, here is the real story about them. And this is how their virtues, their merit, and this is what they still need to work on, all of that. Buddha slowly would explain. So this is then, we say, the Buddhist understanding of who and what all these other beings are. Right? So yes, of course, being that Buddhism began in India, its religious pantheon, its mythology is the same as those used by Hindus, those used by Jains, including those used by Sikhs. Sikhism, another significant religious tradition in India. This is the shared vocabulary, shared mythic world, shared culture, legacy of India, which then from India, of all the religions that came from India, right? The ones that we call Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, only Buddhism went so broad and so pervasive to other parts of Asia. And so then, this Indic mythology got spread all over East and Southeast Asia and North Asia. And then with more layers added to the original Indic understanding. Let's see. Quickly, do the Sitatapatra and Singhamukha Dokpas have different advantages with particular issues? Maybe not. We see. I don't know. Probably, Another question privately sent to me. It says, can Sitatapatra mantra counter, malignant mantras such as this or that? Yeah, basically, that's what it says here. I mean, I don't have any specifics, The Sitatapatra material doesn't name, which mantras they counter and which they don't counter. As you will see later, you will see the point we will come to that point where it says it will break this kind of mantra, it will break this kind of mantra, it will break this kind of mantra, it will break this kind of spell, it will break that kind of spell. Again, having said all of that, I hope, I don't want this to become like, a source of like magic, power play, or superstition, or if you don't believe in any of this, then you think, oh, this is all really stupid. It's neither of these scenarios, It's not literal Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. It's also not literal, this is all symbolic. The reality is much more complex, cannot be easily summarized in this or that view. So I encourage you to kind of be comfortable with the ambiguity, right? Because until we are Buddhists, the reality is what we see out there is ambiguous. You step out of your house, or even just you wake up in the morning, you're still laying on your bed and you look up in the ceiling. You think what you're seeing is clear, but it's not really that clear, If it is clear, it's your concept of your ceiling has solidified over time. But it's not that clear. Reality is really ambiguous. So when we train to become comfortable with ambiguities, with not sure, not certain, now we come back to Buddha's teachings on impermanence. Not sure. Uncertain. So I think never to separate the relative and the ultimate, and then to know that all teachings that the Buddha gave is given to those of us who are still stuck in this relative reality. And so we practice, in the end, the two bodhicittas. As the Lojong in 7 points say, when we are able to see that all our Dharma practices is geared towards one purpose, then we know we are practicing the Buddha Dharma in the right way. And that one purpose is to dispel self-grasping. Stated in another way, is to actualize the two bodhicittas. So today we end with dedication. Again, remember the dedication that I talked about. So before we start chanting this and chanting that, in fact, we're just going to chant the 4 lines, the Bodhicitta dedication, where it says, "The excellent and precious Bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but increase higher and higher." And so we're going to chant this in the Tibetan. But whether you know the chant or you don't know the chant, now take a moment to think what I mentioned earlier at the beginning. So many people want to be free. Everyone wants to be free from suffering. But so few people actually can meet with the teachings that can free them and the circumstance to practice those teachings. So now that you and I have gained some freedom, some moments for accessing those teachings, for practicing those teachings, then whatever benefit that we have experienced, we share with all, so that they too will swiftly, quickly make this connection, form these circumstances, these conditions, and be able to, they themselves, achieve the state of Buddha. Changchu sem chorem poche ma ge pa nam ge gyuji ge ba nyam pa me pa yang one gong du Okay, thank you everybody that participated, and we will make these the recording of this available in the Drikung Dhammakirti YouTube channel. So there's a YouTube channel of the things that I have done, various different topics. So if you go to YouTube and look for Drikung Dhammakirti YouTube channel, then you will be able to find it. So soon we will upload this when we have it ready. Thank you so much. You all have a good day, have a good evening.
Gracias, Dr. Lai.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
非常感谢。
Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Uchiche. Thank you very much.
Ta-da.
Gracias.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.